All right, chat, we're going to react to Preach and Final Fantasy. Finished. Let's go.
A Realm Reborn 2.0 is complete. I really want to talk about that. Not only that, but we got to see a first taste of what raiding looks like in Final Fantasy. Just a little taster. And I found the Golden Carousel. And as a World of Warcraft fan, it made me so goddamn depressed. Let's go.
You mean saucer?
So here we are with lots of things being rounded up in the level 50 Realm Reborn area. Let's start with the Black Mage questline. This was not as good as the first one. I loved the Six Brothers. I thought they were really fun. Again, surprising because they were Lalafels, and obviously my inclination coming into Final Fantasy was that they were going to just absolutely destroy my mind. But I ended up loving that Black Mage questline. This one, not as much. It was fine. It gave a bit more backstory and history and kind of concluded with the same conclusion that we had with the Six Brothers, the same sort of setting, the same sort of demon. But ultimately, it gave me a lot more spells. And this is where I'm definitely at odds with some of you reading through the comments. A lot of you were like, Black Mage leveling is the worst thing ever. It's spoiling it. You should swap to something else. You should try a different job. And I would say one of the most frequently asked questions I've had over the last 10 levels or so since we did our Day 4 video is, what other jobs are you going to try? And people were surprised to be saying, nothing. I'm really happy with what we're doing right now. People are like, what? No, it's terrible. It's really, really bad. Here's the thing. From my perspective, I don't really still know, even to this day, what the other jobs do. So I have nothing to compare it against.
I was just about to say that. Like, I didn't like Black Mage leveling personally because it felt like every 10 levels my rotation would change. And in other classes, they didn't really do that. They kind of built upon the previous rotations and they just like added flair to it. Whereas Black Mage, it has probably one of the most fundamental changes between levels, or these big chunk of levels, of how your rotation works and how things work. And it's really jarring when you get level sync. I even heard Preach complain when he was I was watching the stream, and he was like, oh, this doesn't work anymore. I can't do this. I can't do that. This doesn't work. I can't do this spell. You know, every job has to contend with going down levels and not being able to do stuff. But with Black Mage, your fundamental rotation mindset changes, I think, the most out of any jobs out there. And I think that's why people say it's tough to level because of that. But from Preacher's perspective, he doesn't even know how the other jobs are. So this is his first try and his first foray at this. So he's kind of ignorant to what we were, for those of us who leveled other jobs before Black Mage. He's kind of ignorant to that. And I think that's working to his favor.
Right? So that's definitely an advantage to my side. The other side of it is I like really fast gameplay. We've talked about this several times while I've been streaming Final Fantasy, that as much as World of Warcraft has made so many mistakes recently in terms of its content, it's unrivaled in terms of its gameplay. And that's just, I consider that
I'm so tired of hearing that. Unrivaled in terms of its gameplay. Listen, WoW combat isn't bad, but I think it gets too much hype for what it is. Because, I mean, I could think of 17 other MMOs that have better combat and gameplay than WoW. Their content sucked, though. But the actual gameplay and the combat was excellent. I don't know. WoW's combat it felt very light to me. It still feels light to me. It doesn't feel like it has any kind of heft or any kind of, I don't know. It just, Diablo feels better than WoW. And that's weird to say. I think Diablo's combat feels better than WoW's combat. And you would think they'd be similar, but to me they aren't.
Objective facts, although some people would prefer the other side. In terms of responsiveness and interactivity, World of Warcraft is the king. It's in fact better than...
No, hard disagree.
A lot of single-player RPGs in its gameplay. It's extraordinarily good at what it does in that regard. And
No, it's not.
I did 3 mythic raid bosses last night, just before recording this, because...
Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's bad, but it's not that good. It's just not that good.
We can, and I have my little Tuesday raid team that clears heroic in an hour, so they were like, should we do 3 mythic bosses?
But I can definitely see why you would prefer it, but to put it on the pedestal versus other games, that's where I disagree.
And it was very apparent to me that the gameplay is still king, and Final Fantasy suffers there, as do loads of other games. Like loads, an entire wealth of games that go along with it. So coming into Final Fantasy, obviously I've been made aware of the 2.5 second global cooldown. It's super slow, the gameplay is jank, you're basically playing a vanilla World of Warcraft experience, which is also pretty bad because you're built around this endgame idea, but you're nowhere near endgame. And one thing that's been really, definitely a little awkward and almost a little obnoxious with Black Mage is that because of the level syncing system, because you over-level the story rather quickly, right? So the story stuff will be level 43, but you might be level 47, which means you picked up several new abilities.
And that's a recent thing, by the way. It didn't always used to be this way. It was the opposite. In the early days of Final Fantasy, those of you who leveled in the early days, you were constantly behind on levels. So your main story quest was always gated. It was always red. You'd have to go do fates. You'd have to go do leave quests. You'd have to go do your hunting log. You have to do all these things to make up for the levels. And they made a design change to where the main story quest essentially would take care of itself. You really wouldn't have to do hardly any side content. I think some people have done some experiments, and it's like you only get like one time where you're under leveled if you just go through the main story quest. Like if you don't do any roulettes, you don't do anything on the side. I think you only get like, I think it's around 47 or something like that. Maybe in the 20s too. I think it's like maybe one or two spots where you might be under sync. And that doesn't include like if you have the ring, if you have like the Hall of Novice ring, or if you got like a pre-order earring or something like that gives you more XP, XP food, free company, XP buff, squadron stuff if you do that. You know, it doesn't include any of that. This is if you come in cold, if you come in, you know, just doing an MSQ. You know, that's the way it goes. So that's how it is now. You're constantly over leveled. Constantly.
And all those abilities alter how your character plays nearly entirely. And then suddenly you get thrown into a dungeon or you get thrown into a duty and they take those spells away and you have to revert to a different playstyle. So all the way through it, I got maybe 7 or 8 different complete playstyles to use with my Black Mage depending on what I was doing. Now, honestly, that was kind of fun. It was kind of fun. It was a little obnoxious. It was a little like, I kind of wish I just, like, for example, I would just get a brand new spell that sounded really cool, like Flare, and I wouldn't be able to use it because the next mission involves you not being the level that you would appropriately get Flare. So you don't have it anymore. And you're like, oh, God, I like that as an execute, but also I know how to play this because I've learned it. And it kept it interesting. In a world where the gameplay isn't particularly good, it kept that gameplay interesting. And as I've already said, having cast time, so I'm casting fires, I'm casting blizzards, I'm casting these AoEs, the global cooldown meant nothing to me, which I think was a saving grace. If I would have been playing something else, I'm almost certain the global cooldown would have been more of a problem. I can't confirm that, but that's how I feel it would have gone. So although a lot of you have been like, you should try a different job, you should try a different job. Or more realistically, let's say, you should try my favorite job in terms of you as the viewer.
Oh, yeah.
I've been totally fine with the Black Mage and will continue to play Black Mage because I'm very much enjoying it. And now the gameplay has really picked up. So the conclusion to the Black Mage story did give me my final powers, which I think was Flare, for now, until I level into like the next expansion, so to speak. And it's been great. It's been absolutely fantastic. I had no worries about it. The story was a little weaker than the original half of the Black Mage story, but overall it's pretty good. We have finished the main story of ARR now. Let's talk about that a little bit, because it did lose me for a spell. It did lose me for a spell. One thing I really, really, truly commend Squeenix for here is utilizing the players and a raid group for the finale encounters. This was genius. This was absolutely genius. It made so much more sense to do this. Is to
Cape
like say,
Westwind.
Okay, now we're going to bump you up to actually like an 8-player
Cape
version of raids in order to
the
get
hardest
stuff done.
raid.
I will have to commend the like nearly 10,000 people who were watching me do this, who all were in on the joke, and I was not in on the joke of Cape Westwind, which apparently has become a running gag, certainly with streamers who are checking out Final Fantasy, is to go on about how hard Cape Westwind is, and
we
that you
get
need to
them,
read
chat,
the guide.
every
We're gonna skip forward 4 hours if you're not interested in watching Mike fail. And I was seeing this out the corner of my eye. As much as I'm trying to like not be guided, it's hard to not see all that.
Listen, this is probably the best running gag in Final Fantasy XIV. I don't know when it started. I just noticed it this year. I've never seen people do this, but Cape Westwind, man, they hype it up as the hardest fight in the entire game to all these streamers, and they get them every single time. It's hilarious.
Going on, especially with huge copy pastas about how much we're going to fail. So I totally bought into it. I actually got to Cape Westwind, and I was like, okay, I've been hearing about this for the last 7 hours of preparation leading to Cape Westwind. So I went up, I got a drink, I stretched my legs, I let my dog out so I could come back for a full degenerate gaming session, and then smash it to pieces. Were you guys trolling me, or did that? I don't know what happened.
Oh, they got him.
Did you guys? You were 100% trolling for like the last day? A whole day. I was like, why is everyone so building this up? You fucking dickheads, man.
Wow.
Oh, you absolute clowns. All you've had all day is literal fucking spam endlessly about this. But I got to commend the guys for putting down a ton of world markers and like saying everybody needs to stack A, stack B, and I was like,
stack.
I'm not going to read a guide. I was even putting it, I was like, guys, relax. I'm not going to read a guide. I want to learn it. I want to figure it out. That's how I am. And they were like, no, man, you're going to be here for like 4 hours. This is ridiculous.
Where's Johnny?
Make sure you take a really seasoned raid group and all this stuff. And then we got in there, and it's a pushover, which is what it's supposed to be. And I do want to address here a lot of people getting a little bit upset or a little bit frustrated that I cleared this content very easily, knowing that I like hard content. And I think part of it is worrying that I'm going to be upset or laugh at the game in some way, because the final 3 raid groups that you do to finish the main story are very, very easy.
Yeah, I actually watched them do this live. Well, I watched them do Castor Meridian, Summer Praetorium. I didn't get to see Cape Westwind though. And I think one of the things that he was commenting on, and he's probably going to mention this, is just how engulfing it was, like the story wise. It wasn't talking about the combat or the difficulty of the raid, but just how it included the players, how it included you as part of the story, and it was like a bow on top of the present, like a good cherry on top of the ice cream.
And then being a little like, he's going to hate the game now. He's going to not like it. And they're like, this is LFR, this is not the hard stuff. I totally know that before I even get there, right? I think that's very clear that and I said this about Path of Exile, I said this about Final Fantasy, I've said this about World of Warcraft. Game developers in this type of environment do not want to make a story element that you are forced to go through hard. And some people really get odds with that because, the story's really, really easy. It's supposed to be. It's absolutely supposed to be. It's supposed to give you a taste. It's supposed to show you what it's like. There'll be some people who really didn't like running around with 8 players, so they do it in a very simple way. I think a great idea as well is the dungeon roulette, which means that there's a constant influx of players to help out with that content, to help fledgling players get through that period of doing these raid trials instead of waiting for all fresh, brand new players and making extraordinary queue times. Putting that in is a great touch as well. So I don't want anybody to worry, I guess is what I'm saying, that I think the game is super piss easy because of the story mode. I think that's a crazy idea to have and to try to justify the game gets harder, because I do see some of our viewers going, wow, that was really easy. Like they were expecting some rock hard mythic style encounter to be in the story mode, which they personally would hate. Frankly, people would hate to have some ridiculously rock hard multiplayer, single player. Okay, fine, you can start.
Yeah, MMORPGs is not a genre where you'd see that very often. I mean, it's true in like any other single player RPG. There's going to be some semi difficult areas, and I'm not talking about like Dark Souls or anything like that. I'm talking about like along the lines of like Final Fantasy VII Remake or something like that. It's just there's going to be semi hard fights, but at the end of the day, they don't want anything to be so hard that it trips you up to where you're on it for days, right? That's why they have multiple difficulties in those games. So if you want something really hard, you go to the hardest difficulty, and then you might be on the boss for a few hours. But MMORPGs, this genre really doesn't lend itself to that kind of thinking. It's like to get through the story, generally is going to be easy. It's just that's going to be the case for every MMO out there.
I was work over it a little bit, but in a multiplayer with strangers. No, that's when organized content has its place and has its purpose, and I love that too, but I don't expect that in the story mode. So that would be great. How do I feel about the conclusion to the story? Surprisingly, did not mind the Power Rangers Empire stuff. I had been building towards it towards the end. Gaius
Rangers.
was Evil McEvilson, which is whatever. It's not an overly complex story by any means. It's a good story though. It did keep me going. I really enjoyed the inclusions of Sid towards the end. Even Alphinaud did not annoy me that much.
Alphinaud.
Like, people really disliked Alphinaud, and he has a very whiny, pretentious voice that goes along with it, which he's supposed to have as a prince. His character is actually fine. Likeable, not really, but like his character was fine. Never really had a problem with that.
I think chat can be melodramatic. I think I think the excitement gets to his chat, and a lot of chats that, you know, a lot of people come into there and they talk about different characters. They get melodramatic, especially about like voice actors. I listen, Minfilia in 2.0, to me, her voice actress is like nails on a chalkboard. Please come to the waking sense so that we may. I'm just like, you know, I get a little bit obnoxious when it comes to that too. And some people are the same with Alphinaud. It's his voice actor and, you know, just the character. But, you know, with spoilers aside, you come to realize that he actually realizes that he was that way. And he starts to mature. And it's a really good character development moment. Because like, yeah, Alphinaud, yeah, that was you. Yeah, you were, yep, that was you, Alphinaud. You know, so you kind of see him develop from that spoiled brat, know-it-all, prodigy kid to what he becomes.
The only place it lost me, I mentioned earlier, the story did lose me for a spell. For about a 3-minute period after you do complete the story and you go to see Heidelin again, you turn into sort of like a full anime swirly rainbow group of people that purify Thancred of his corruption, his mind control, whatever you want to call it.
The infamous scream.
That I did not get what the hell was going on. That was like the only part though. Realistically, the only part. Like, I can deal with some greater power in the form of Heidelin contacting you because you have the power of the Echo. That's great, but then at the end it was like everybody turns into a big unicorn of
the
RGB
power of friendship
lights
mode
and flies through Thancred. I was like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, I had no clue what was happening there. But that was literally the only moment it lost me, and I truly enjoyed that it gave a credits, and it made me so sour that when it comes to World of Warcraft, you don't have that sort of finale moment, especially now that all the expansions are mixed. Like, again, it reminds me so much of Garrisons in that they're so practical and not fun. And Blizzard always leans that way in terms of just raw practicality instead of just fun and silliness where it's appropriate, and enhancing their experience. It's the same as I said about mounts with Final Fantasy XIV. A lot of them are immersion breaking, but it doesn't matter because they're so fun.
Yep.
It's fine because players just want to have fun. And I really felt this at this point. It's like, I can't play through like the vanilla World of Warcraft story in this kind of way with a definitive endpoint where literal credits roll and we have a big finale to the story and it's, you know, Ragnaros has been defeated or whatever you want to call the end of vanilla. If we go all the way to Icecrown and it's like Kel'Thuzad and the phylactery has been destroyed, we're free, we're doing whatever, you know, things like that. It doesn't have that moment, and it made me really sad. It made me really sad. It's like, oh, I just play through it to get the fastest levels possible.
Yeah.
And that's where we are there. Instead of having like these definitive endpoints, an A to B conclusion with a good middle as well, a story being told. But I don't want to harp on about that too much. World of Warcraft knows it's got work to do with its story, and you guys are more than aware if you play Final Fantasy XIV that the story is such an integral part. Which is why I do want to address in the last video, I did say, like, if people really dislike this kind of storytelling, they should boost. And people got really upset with that. Look, man, in the circles I travel in, there are people who couldn't give two rats' asses about running backwards and forwards, because the story is good. Let's not pretend, though, it doesn't have a lot of faults. There's an enormous amount of storytelling, which is...
Yeah, you guys, if you haven't seen my video on boosting, I talk about how boosting is not just about the story. And I talk about why Final Fantasy XIV players don't like boosting. And people think it's just story skip. And I'm telling you that there's other facets of boosting that you suffer from. It creates more work for you when you boost. It's more stuff you have to learn. And the reason why Final Fantasy XIV players don't like that is because they have friends that are lazy. And they'll be like, this game sucks. after they boost it, because they won't actually try to put any effort to make up for what they skipped. So it's a circular argument. It's forever going to be one of those things that people are going to agree, disagree, but ultimately it comes down to the player willing to put in the effort if they boost. And sometimes you see that, sometimes you don't.
Run backwards and forwards for about 30 to 40 minutes, just delivering messages with a lot of dialogue in there. I know a lot of people who will not put up with that and just dislike the game for that and put it down. And that might be where I'm heading next after this Realm Reborn stuff, but we'll talk about that in a little while. Let's talk about the Golden Carousel. So the Golden Carousel was something I saw mentioned by a lot of people, not only in the YouTube comments, but in my Twitch stream, since day one has he found the Golden Carousel. And I hadn't found it. Until I entered the zone, into the desert, where I could see the Golden Carousel. I was like, oh, there it is. That's the Golden Carousel. I've heard about it. I didn't know what it was, which is great. No one spoiled it for me. And then we can, you should go and see it. That was kind of the message I was getting. You should go and see the Golden Carousel. I was like, okay, we'll go and check it out. Wow. Fantastic. That's a whole game in itself. And again, it made me a little sad. It's the same thing we've been begging for in World of Warcraft since Kata. If not earlier, I mean, if you go back through my videos all the way back to Cataclysm, you will find me referencing this. Certainly when they built Galawix's Pleasure Palace. And for those of you who don't know what it is a casino full of mini-games. Some are multiplayer, some are single player, they have fairground things, and, like, putting the Dark Moon Fair next to it is an embarrassment. It's so fun. It has scoreboards, weekly scoreboards. It has a lottery going on, which people go and check. It was brimming with people. It has a huge variety of transmog. It has transmog competitions that are running in there. It has a pet. It's not a pet battle system. I forget the name of it, but it's one of the most involved
Verminion
RTS games I've seen in ages. It was crazy.
I've never done Verminion.
Going through the tutorial was like exhausting to figure out like the entire minigame they've put in there. That's a full-on RTS with controllable units that you spawn from certain areas, and then you have limits and resource gathering and things like that. You have objectives to do, and I was like, my initial impression, of course, was taken from World of Warcraft. I was like, oh, it's a pet battle thing. Because it does involve your companions / pets that you found along your journey. So I read it, and it was like, oh, use your companions to go into battle. And I was like, oh, it's pet battling? That's not for me. I don't want to do the Pokemon stuff. Wait, then that's when
it's like,
no. You have to go and see this thing.
It's not Pokemon.
It's a full-on RTS with a battlefield and top-down view and controlling units and literally doing click drag boxes over enemies to get them where you want to go and all this kind of stuff. It was super evolved. My best thing, though, was every 20 minutes they have a major event in the casino. Which means that you do an event, which is like jumping puzzles, chocobo racing, a huge event where you all stand on a huge disc, and whoever enters is in there, so you can have 100+ people on there, and then you just have to avoid falling debris and predict where to go, and if you win, you get a huge bunch of tokens, which then convert into special mounts and transmogs and things like that. Overall, the Golden Carousel is fantastic. Like, it is a full game in of itself, and I definitely had to drag myself away just to not stay there for so long.
Yeah.
And, again, made me really sad because it's something we've been asking for so long. In World of Warcraft, is like we should have this. We should have.
I call him Yoshimitsu.
And it's another definite tick for Final Fantasy XIV. So overall, I'm still very much in love with this game. I'm very much excited for it. I haven't really touched the raiding yet. As much as the end of the main storyline in AIR gives you a little taster, it's not raiding. But what's been fantastic is the amount of people who definitely have boosted in the past and never got to do the 50 raids and don't really know what happens there, who are like, can we do it? And yes, we're absolutely going to do it. So that is where I am right now with Final Fantasy XIV, is getting ready to step into the raids, the first raids, before we start Heaven's War. There you have it, folks, and now the plan is pretty simple, right? I really want to jump into these level 50 raids, see what they're all about. Of course, there's been changes to the game, won't be as hard as originally was, but I really want to check them out and see what's going on with it. I'm going to take a little break now and jump into New World for a few days, see what's going on with that, and then, after that little break from all the voice acting and all the expeditions in Final Fantasy, we're going to jump into the patch content. Had a lot of warnings about this. This is where a lot of people quit Final Fantasy XIV. So I'm kind of interested to see exactly what it is that makes them so upset with the game at that point. A lot of people have warned me it's going to be a bit of a slog, it's not going to be that fun, and then we're going to get to Heaven's Ward, which is apparently where it's all going to blow up and it's going to be fantastic. So that is what's next up. Check out some New World, and also as a little teaser, on Saturday, EVE have been in contact with us, EVE Online. They want us to check out their game from this fresh player perspective. They have completely revamped their new player experience.
That today.
And many people have a weird thought about EVE Online, that it's very technical, it's a spreadsheet type of game. So we're going to be jumping in and seeing if that's the case.
Okay, so I'm really impressed. Like, I'm really impressed that that Preach. I won't say impressed. I think I'm more pleasantly surprised that he is taking a good attitude to Final Fantasy, because honestly, I think he was a little bit lenient with it. I think he could have been a little bit more critical, but I think he was being careful, probably because of community backlash and some of the really negative voices of Final Fantasy XIV. They tend to show up and ruin everything. They've been known to do that. They'll come in and just ruin everything. But he's been very generous. But I can tell he's been having a good time because he's been smiling. I think some people said this is the Asmon joke that his hair is growing back. Because he's having such a good time. I'm really happy I'm happy for him, because I generally saw him enjoying like the trials. Like the trials were a refreshing experience for him, and you know, he was really enjoying the spectacle. I think that's what he said, the spectacle of the trials. Knowing that, you know, the difficulty wasn't all that great, it was just a spectacle of it. And everybody was like, well, you're gonna have that spectacle and you're gonna have the difficulty coming up later in the later trials. I'm curious to see how far he goes. And spoiler alerts, he's already quit New World. He said it was too grindy, so he's already quit that, which I kind of predicted. I saw a little bit of him playing Eve today, but I didn't see a whole lot. I don't know how he felt about that. But man, Preach. He was one of the last ones that we covered to play Final Fantasy, because we covered a bunch of people that were leaving WoW. Right, and Preach was like the only one that hadn't played Final Fantasy yet. Maybe one or two other people. And when I saw him playing, I was like, wow, he's actually gonna. I didn't think he was gonna play it at all. I really didn't, because he seemed like the type that wouldn't like it, and I'm actually surprised that he did. All right, check him out. I'll put the link in the show description. You can go click on it, give it a like, show Preach some love. He's also on Twitch. I don't have his Twitch link readily available, but I'll put that in the show description as well. Y'all take care of yourselves, and Preach, keep enjoying Final Fantasy XIV.